everyone's able to pack their bags and go off to college for 4 years. But the student grant scheme today doesn't cover part-time learning. It also sometimes doesn't understand some of the costs you can have, like childcare costs. On paper, it can look like a family has a decent income coming in, but perhaps in reality, they have lots of costs and lots of expenses, particularly if there's more than one child in the family going to college. So really what I'm here to do tonight at Patrick's invitation is I'm here to listen. You might go on to the next slide there, please. I'm here to listen. I'm here to ask you to give me your views on how we can make the student grant scheme better. We've opened it up to public consultation between now and the 16th of April. So again, in the email Patrick will send you all, there's a specific email address called Student Grant Scheme Review at dfheris.gov.ie, Student Grant Scheme Review at dfheris.gov.ie. We'll email that to you all. And between now and the 16th of April, whether you're a student, whether you're the parent of a student, whether you might be a student in the future, or you're a teacher or you're a career guidance counselor, we want to get everybody's view on how we can make it better. Could you go on to the next slide, please? So I've already in some of my introduction gone through some of this, but I'm just it's worth just recapping a little bit. So SUSI is Ireland's student support scheme, and the goal is to help make sure everybody can reach college. It provides maintenance grants for students, and it also pays the registration fee for students as well. And as I was saying, about 44% of students in Ireland have their registration fee paid in full or in part by SUSI. We're now entering almost the 10th year, and over 100,000 people apply for this scheme every year. Can I have the next slide, please? I've highlighted some of these things already, but these are some of the big concerns I have, that we have a student grant scheme that doesn't support you if you're part-time studying. I think the adjacency rates don't recognize that it's much more expensive to go to college if you have to move out of your family home. And then also, as I've said, it doesn't cover or take into consideration costs. It just looks at your income. It doesn't necessarily look at the expenses you might have. Next slide, please. So what can you do? So the review is well underway. And what I've asked the review group to do is give me recommendations this summer as to how we can immediately start making progress. And we want to hear from everybody and anybody. If you go to gov.ie, you can find the link with all the information. But Patrick and myself will do a detailed information note to everyone who's attended this meeting. And what I'd ask you to do is please share it far and wide with other students who might be interested. Indeed, if you're working in a school, if you're a teacher or a career guidance counsellor, or indeed in a students' union, be very grateful if you would pass that information on as well. But Patrick, I'm really here tonight to listen. We've held a number of these meetings across the country. I was in Longford and in Roscommon and in Galway and indeed in Dublin and now in Limerick. We've a number more planned. And really, it's an opportunity for me to hear from the people of Limerick as to what ideas they have as to how we could make it easier for people to access further education, to access higher education. This is just one of a number of things. And I outlined just at the start of the meeting where we lost you temporarily there, I outlined a number of the changes that we want to make, be it to the CAO form, an apprenticeship action plan, making sure people have a chance to engage in lifelong learning, tackling student accommodation, a new access plan. But this SUSI grant scheme is a key piece of the jigsaw. It's a key commitment in the programme for government, and really looking forward to hearing as many of your views. I'm conscious sometimes at public meetings like this, not everyone wants to put up their virtual hand and have their say, but feel free to put a comment in the chat box either. And Sarah from my team is with me here, and we'll try to respond to as many of them alongside me this evening. And also, look, if you have a personal issue that you want to discuss and you don't want to share it publicly tonight, that's no problem as well. If you want to email it to Patrick, I'll link in with Patrick's office and come back to you as well. So Patrick, I might hand over to you to say a few words as well, but thank you so much for having me here this evening. Thank you to everybody. That last slide is a really, really important slide. I want everybody in this country to know there are so many ways to get to where you want to get to in life. Some people will want to go straight from school into college. That's great. We want to help you. Others will want to earn and learn. Some people might have missed out on the opportunity to go to college, and now in your 40s or 50s, you might want to go back to. We need to create an integrated third level system where everybody can get to where they want to get to through whichever route is the best for them. And that is my absolute driving passion as minister in this new department. And I'm really looking forward to a major program of reform in that area. So thanks so much, Patrick, for having me here this evening. I look forward to hearing from people.
Thanks, Simon, and apologies for getting booted off at the start of my own meeting. It's a good one when you're evicted out of your own meeting, but we had something that I suffer from living in a rural area. You part of your house, you don't actually your kids get to rule the roost, and part of the place doesn't have the strongest of Wi-Fi. But the end of the contribution actually is where I'm going to take you up on, because it actually relates to myself, and for some of the participants. I actually retrained in my 30s and went back, having gone to college straight out of my Leaving Cert. I found, having worked in industry as an industrial chemist for over almost 10, 12 years, then took a major career, I suppose, U-turn in my 30s, went back to become a primary teacher. So it is something that even late in people's lives, and there may be people on the call who aren't just, going the conventional route of the Leaving Cert, going straight into third level. And I think one of the things that we are trying to do is, and Simon is the first minister for higher and further education and science sitting at the cabinet table, there's recognition by the government for the first time that higher and continuing education and further education isn't just about the conventional degree pathway. There are other ways of reaching people's different career choices that maybe different routes get you to where you actually want to get to in life, and that journey may have to involve different pathways, and funding is something that obviously the government is very conscious of. So this review is timely, and I wanted to use the opportunity to ask Simon to come and do what is a very different form of public meeting than as well. For the last 12 months, this is the new norm. So there are, I know some people may be reluctant, as Simon says, to stick up their hands in a virtual space, but if you are want to ask a question, use the chat box. Some of the questions may be repetitive, and some people may have already asked them in Longford or Dublin, so that's some of the questions might be easily emailed out to you later on. And if people do want to ask a question, that's no problem. Either Shane or Sean, I think, are going to admin the actual room from now on, and I think Sarah as well is going to assist. So I'll hand you back to the administrators, and we'll wrap up at the end of the meeting as well.
Yeah, we have a question. We have a question in from Marie Harty, actually. How do you think that the new system would be ready for the college year 2021-22?
Well, thanks so much, Marie. And I should say to people, feel free to ask any question about my brief, or indeed any question on your mind. So so feel free if you want to make a contribution about more broadly our further and higher education system, how we reform it, how we support students, how we help get people from secondary school to where they want to. Feel free to ask any questions you wish. Thanks very much, Marie, for the question. The honest answer is some changes, yes. We won't be able to do everything in 1 year. So I'll give you an example. Last year, to be honest, I was quite embarrassed about how low the level of support for our postgraduate students was. So last year I made a change in relation to postgraduate students that now will kick in from September, where we've doubled the grant for a postgraduate student, and we've also pretty much doubled the amount you can earn to qualify. This year, I plan on making some more changes. There's a couple of changes I'll be bringing in straight away. For example, we'll be letting the fuel allowance, any income from the fuel allowance used to be counted towards your income. We'll be disregarding that. And we'll be looking over the summer months to see what the review comes back with, to see if we can get some measures in place quickly for this year. So my honest view is I think we'll be able to make some changes for the coming year, but I reckon this review is going to come up with quite a lot of changes. I certainly hope it does. And I'd say what we'll be looking to do is introduce a few of them a year for the next couple of years. We're already, as I say, covering about 44% of students' registration fees. I'd like to see if we can obviously push that up further. So the short answer is I think we'll be able to make some changes this year and a few more then building on it, but need to wait and see what the review gives me when it reports, probably in July. Thanks very much, Marie.
We're just waiting for some more questions to come through. So if you'd like to ask either Simon or Patrick a question, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom client, and you can ask your question there. Alternatively, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So I think we've got Tom Ruddle who's come through. So I'm going to, if that's okay, just going to unmute. So Tom, you you should be able to hear us. You have the floor.
Yeah, I am. Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much, Simon,
Hi,
for
Tom.
your very good presentation there. I think it's very good that you're bringing in the apprenticeship plan there, because I just see it there, like with building and stuff like that. A guy said to me there lately, he said, every builder is nearly middle-aged at this stage, because unfortunately, I suppose after the crash we had, there was no young people going into trades and things like that. So I really welcome that. And I suppose if we can bring that up to a higher standard, it would be very good. Also, I suppose on grants, like you have some people there, like which just kind of miss out on getting a grant. Like, right, they have a big mortgage for the house. Whatever the limit is at the moment, but I know people there like that nearly struggle. It's nearly easier that the less you have, it's nearly easier to go to college now sometimes than a person who's trying to work hard every day, getting out in the morning, and they have a big mortgage in a house, and they find it very hard to put a child to college. Like I have done it myself. My two kids went as far as master's levels, and like the cost is astronomical. I mean, you're looking at least 12,000 a year there every year for a child going to school. And if they do masters, you're looking at 6 years going to college. And a lot of courses today. I mean, my two kids are two primary teachers. I mean, you have to have a master's nearly today to be a primary teacher. And I suppose the pay isn't that major, but look, it's kind of more of a vocation, as Patrick would probably tell you there as well, you know. But I just wonder, is there anything that can be done with people that are finding it difficult like that, to fall between the cracks? I mean, it's like everything. We have people that fall through the cracks, you know, and they just don't make it one way or the other. And sometimes the kids just can't go to college.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you'd answer that, Simon, but look.
Well, thanks a million, Councillor Tom, and thanks so much for being here as well. I very much appreciate it, and for all you do. I mean, two parts to your question. I mean, on the apprenticeship plan, I feel really passionate about this. We are not where we need to be. Every year, about 6,000 to 6,500 people register to be apprentices in Ireland. There's real low-hanging fruit to do more here. So we're setting a target. I can let you in on an insight. We'll bring a plan to government next month that will set a target of hiring 10,000 new apprentices a year by 2025. That's the first thing. How are we going to get there? A number of ways, but two things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make it easier for businesses to take on apprentices. So we've set up a new scheme now where you get €3,000 for any apprentice you take on. That's having a real benefit. It's also making it a bit easier for small and medium businesses, the backbone of our country, to actually take on apprentices. Second thing we have to do, though, is the public sector has to step up here. Would you believe there's only about 300 apprentices working across the entire public service? I mean, that's actually embarrassing, and it's not good enough. So our new plan will set a target for every single county council, every city council, every government department, every state agency. And I'll be working closely with Patrick's department in the OPW here to see how we can actually take on people in every agency and give young people and not so young people a chance at a career. I really think we have to step up. This is transformational. So the apprenticeship thing is something that government is really going to be focusing on a lot. And look, you're right. You're entirely right on the what we call the squeeze middle, I suppose. There's lots of people who work extremely hard and they always just miss out. They're just that little bit over the level for a grant, not just in this area, but in so many areas. So I mean, one of the first things, and in fact, the very first question in the review in the terms of reference is asking the group to look at the income thresholds. And considering the income thresholds haven't increased for 10 years, I mean, I would really like to see that income threshold increase as well. So that's something that I think you should watch out for in the review to see if we can make sure, as I say, about 44% of students are qualifying now. see if we can push that number up, because I think the point you make is very important. Thanks so much.
Simon, we've got a question in from Mary. As first-time parents applying for SUSI, how much is the grant, and does it depend on our earnings?
Mary, it does, and thanks so much for the question. And this is not one where I can just give you one number, because actually there's a sliding scale depending on a whole variety of things to do with someone's family income. But the short answer is we'll send you out a detailed note in relation to this. The maximum grant that anybody can earn is just over €6,000, but there's a tapering where some people qualify for the full €3,000 registration fee to be paid plus a maintenance grant. Some people just qualify for the registration fee to be paid, and some people qualify for some of the registration fee to be paid. So what I'm doing now is going to get the SUSI grant scheme for this year open literally in the next couple of days. So as first-time parents, you don't have to wait for your son or daughter to do the Leaving Cert or get the results. You can actually get that application in straight away, and I'll send you out some details through Patrick's office. Sarah in my team is here, and Sarah, do you anything to add to that further?
Sorry, Minister, I was just going to send Mary a private message in the chat group just with the income thresholds, just to say it does depend, Mary, on your unfortunately on how much you earn, but there is a lot of things that are taken into consideration, including how many dependents that you have, where you live in relation, where one of your children lives in relation to the college. But I'll send you a private chat, Mary, and come back to me if you have any further questions.
We've Sinead Jackson with her hand up. So Sinead, if you'd like to unmute, you're good. You've got the floor.
Hi, I'm a mature student. Thank you so much, by the way, for having me, and thank you for letting me talk.
Oh, thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. And thank you very much for coming along to hear us, actually, as well. I really, really appreciate that very much so. And for Patrick for putting it together. But I'm a mature student, and at the moment I'm appealing my grant for SUSI. Now, I've gotten the grant over the last 3 years, and I came back to do an honours degree. And I've been trying to apply for the grant since August last year, for the whole year, trying to get documentation, because I was actually away in Canada for a year and a half, and then in England for 6 months. And basically I've been in the, for the 3 to 5 years, that was fine. But where I'm caught on is they don't have sufficient evidence to suggest where I was living in 2019 prior to actually doing my course in 2020. And basically what the issue is now is that I was living in accommodation that was being illegally subletted, and as a result I have no evidence, substantial evidence, say in terms of utility bills, to provide to SUSI. Now, I do have my social welfare, but they wouldn't allow that, or they wouldn't accept it. So where I'm at now is I'm appealing it, and they're asking me now for sufficient evidence from my parents. But as a mature student, like for mature students, I feel that the application doesn't really suffice. It doesn't meet the same requirements. Like, imagine, God forbid, but imagine my parents weren't around, and I've been asked to supply, evidence from my parents. I don't feel that's, I can't, even my dad was kind of going, do I have to write a letter for you? And I was like, yeah, you have to write a letter stating that I was never living at the accommodation. I've never lived with my parents since I was 18.
Yeah, no, look, I think sorry, you'll have to excuse the bells going on in the background. I'm in Leinster House, and that bell will stop. That bell will stop in a minute. It's not the doorbell.
All right.
Thanks so much, Sinead, and thank you very much for coming along. I really appreciate it. What I'd like to do just privately is get your details through Patrick's office, or indeed you might put them in the chat function. Sarah and my team will contact you here, and let me see if I can pursue your specific query. But I think the broader point you make is an important one. And it's kind of back to the question I was asking at the start of the meeting. Is the scheme fit for purpose? And you see, not everybody who enters the scheme is 17 or 18. And I don't think, being honest, that the scheme understands that as much as it should. More and more people are going to be going back to education, after a few years out of the school system, or maybe quite a few years out. And the idea that you have to go back to your mother or your father and ask them for a letter is a bit nearly disrespectful to students, if not awkward as well. So let me look at your specific case with SUSI, and my office will come back to you on that. But on the broader point about how mature students are being treated, so to speak, or understood, that is one of the terms of reference as well. So if you get a chance, and I know people are busy, if you get a chance just to stick in a quick submission to the review, be very helpful just to highlight that as an example, I think.
Okay, yeah, no problem at all.
Thanks so much.
Simon, could I just interrupt there and just concur with what Sinead has said, because I'm sure that as a constituency TD we do come across a lot of these, and I'm glad as part of the review you might take these on board, where people are coming back to Ireland and they're going back into education maybe for the first time as Irish people, where they might have immigrated in their teens and they're coming back and they're being asked for letters as people in their 20s and 30s from their parents or their parents' incomes, and they've had no interaction with their parents, or maybe their parents are deceased, and it's there's a real issue in relation to providing letters where or they might have estranged relationships with their parents. So Sinead is after raising a very relevant issue there, that where there is an issue where adult children may not even communicate with their parents, and they're coming into their local TD explaining this. So it's a very good issue. I'm glad she raised it there.
No, absolutely. Thanks. I agree fully. Yeah.
We've got a question coming through from Laura O'Sullivan, right? Will applicants' income threshold be changed to allow for people to continue to work whilst in college? Fantastic to hear higher education and further education be recognised at the same level. Fantastic developments. So
well, thanks very much, Laura, and thanks for being here tonight and for your comments. Just firstly on the higher education and further education, I'm really pleased to hear you say that, because I think we've developed too snobby an attitude in our country to education. And I actually think it's crippling our education system, and it's putting massive pressure on our students. I often joke, and it's a joke, but not much of a joke, that in my hometown, the question often is, do you want to go to UCD or Trinity, rather than what would you like to do with your life and what career would you like? And then showing people the 4 or 5 different ways of getting there. And with very few exceptions, there are often 4 or 5 different ways of getting there. So thank you very much for that. We're going to really drive on with that agenda, and I really think it's the purpose and mission of the new department I have. On the working piece, so at the moment there's a rule. There's a student can earn about $4,000, and that's disregarded as kind of money that they've earned through summer jobs or part-time work. But again, I accept that it's not high enough, and I also accept, back to Sinead's point, that the type of learner that we're dealing with in Ireland is changing, because more and more people are maybe going back to education, second chance education or education later in life, and they might actually have a real need to work. They might have a mortgage, they might have some children, they have dependents. So at the moment, I think the biggest flaw with the SUSI grant system is it doesn't recognize part-time learning. And part-time learning is something that would actually work for an awful lot of people as well. So yes, we're looking at the income thresholds you can have. We're looking at the amount that a student can already earn, which is 4,000 at the moment. But we're also looking at how we can fund student grants, not just for full-time learners, but also for part-time learners as well. Thanks very much, Laura.
We have Sean, Simon, on Sean, if you'd like to unmute there.
Hi. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks.
I have a couple of questions, so I'll try to keep them short. I don't want to keep other people from their time to speak.
No problem.
But I'm John. I go to UL. I'm a journalist student, and I was just in your intro. You were talking about reforming the accommodation, and I was just saying, like, because accommodation takes up a whole lot of the maintenance fees that people get from the SUSI. I was just wanted to see how that's proposed reform to accommodation with that you said, and the likes of the reform to the Higher Education Act. How would they impact like costs, and how essentially like kill 2 birds with 1 stone by going after accommodation and SUSI at the same time? And going back to the threshold, I know a couple of people talked about it already. But like I have a few instances in my course especially where like there's a couple of people that can't meet the income threshold and only over like less than a few hundred. And I was just hoping, I know you can't give like a specific number, but like I was just hoping like with that review to the threshold, would that, like a couple hundred of those, like that threshold of families that are over a few hundred, would they be covered in after the review?
Thanks very much, Sean, and thanks a million for being here. You mentioned journalism and studying journalism. I was looking at the CAO applications for the coming year, and actually one of the biggest increases, I think it's massively up, are the number of people wanting to study journalism. And I suppose we've probably seen the importance of journalism in terms of reporting on the pandemic and stuff. I don't know, is it that people have been watching so much news during the year that everybody wants to be a Richard Chambers or a Zara King or a Fergal Bowers or whatever, or George Lee, but it's there's definitely something going on there, because there's a lot of people a lot of people applying for journalism. But sorry, that's an aside, and I hope it's going well for you. Couple of things. I'm just going to be really honest with you here, because I can give you all the political wiffle waffle in the world. I think we failed on student accommodation. I think we have been far too hands off. I think it is really stupid, quite frankly, that we have students having to compete with families to rent a limited number of houses. Probably this is probably the situation in Limerick. It's definitely the situation that I know not too far from my home, where we have a limited number of housing stock. We all know the housing challenges. So what do? We pit students and families against each other to try and rent those houses. And what does that do? Obviously push up the price. We've also seen in the COVID pandemic, in UL, for example, I was able to talk to the president of UL and say, listen, will you give a refund to students who can't use their student accommodation? And in fairness to the president of UL, that's what they've done, or at least that's what they tell me they've done and are doing, and that's good. I don't have that same clout with private accommodation. So I have a student accommodation policy that I inherited, and I'm just being honest, I don't think it is good enough. I don't have a short-term fix. There's no point me misleading you on that. But what would I like to see? I'd like to see the state, or certainly at least the universities, build an awful lot more and own an awful lot more accommodation. So I'd like to see the University of Limerick, I'd like to see LIT as it becomes a technological university, I'd like to see them be able to have their own student accommodation and more student accommodation. So that's ultimately what I want to get done. On the SUSI, and you're right, because you're absolutely right to link the issues, because I mean, one of the biggest costs, the biggest cost of going to college is the cost of accommodation if you have to move out of your home. So one of the things that I'm going to look at in the short term, and I think I can do something on this quicker, is how do we recognize what they call the adjacency rate? How do we recognize the students who are having to spend a lot more money? Like I say, when I was going to college, I was able to commute in and out. Some people in Limerick are able to do that, others aren't. So that's the short answer to what is a big problem. But I've asked my officials to come back to me before the summer with kind of proposals, I was going to say concrete proposals, if you'll pardon the pun, as to what more we can actually do in terms of having college-owned accommodation, because I actually think it's a big part of the overall housing challenge in Ireland, being very honest. On the thresholds, I mean, in fairness, you said yourself, I'm not going to say tonight what it's going to go to, but I think both Patrick and I would be of a view that it's not logical that a scheme that's in place for 10 years hasn't seen the thresholds move in a decade. And the very first, I have the terms of reference for the review here in front of me. And item 1 on the terms of reference is to look at the value of the maintenance grant and to look at the income thresholds. And not just to look at them in an Irish context, but also to look at what are other European countries doing and see if we can do better. So I would imagine a couple of hundred is not an unrealistic expectation, but we just need to see where the review brings us to. And you mentioned governance, Sean. Yeah, we are going to bring forward new governance legislation. We're going to pass a new law this year. We do need greater public transparency. We're spending as taxpayers €1.83 billion a year on higher education, more than we ever have in the history of our state. We need to make sure that student voices are protected, taxpayers protected, and that our governing authorities are fit for purpose. So there will be change coming. Not everybody will be delighted about it, but I think it's really, really important. So we'll bring in that new HEA bill and hopefully get it passed through both houses of the Oireachtas this year. Thanks so much for your questions.
We've Susan Connolly who's put in a question. Hello, I work with our communities here in Limerick and support a lot of mature students with SUSI, and would like advice and support on how we could showcase this new program, because I think we could be reaching out to lots more people in the community with this. That's from Susan.
Well, thanks, Susan. I mean, let me just make you an offer here tonight that if you want to organise a virtual roundtable or a virtual event, I'll come and speak at it, and I'll give a briefing and a presentation to any mature students or any learners that you have. Perhaps another thing, and you can arrange that through Patrick's office. I'm more than happy to do that. I think you're right. I mean, I fully accept that we have more work to do in general as a government to support people getting to where they want to get to. But we also have a second problem, which is making sure that people are aware of the supports that are there. And all too often, there's a group of people in society that don't get the information maybe as readily as others. So I'd be delighted, more than happy to work with you on that. Second thing, perhaps we could do, I can ask SUSI to run information campaigns in local newspapers and on the local radio and the likes, and maybe to put forward some spokespeople to go on Limerick local radio and the likes, and actually talk about it. So more than happy to come myself, and also we'll look at how we can get the information out through the local media and through social media as well. Thanks so much, Susan, and thanks for all the work you do.
We've got Dan McSweeney with his hand up in the audience. Dan, you've got the floor. Do you want to unmute?
Thanks a million, Simon, for coming, and thanks, Patrick, for hosting this event. Hopefully, once COVID allows, Simon will be able to welcome you to Limerick in person. And I'd just like to thank you for all your hard work during the early days of the pandemic. You worked extremely hard, and thank you for myself, and I suppose everyone here tonight will thank you for that. I just have 2 points to make, Simon, not really questions. The first point is the income threshold. Councillor Ruddle referred to it. I think it really is important that you do look at the income threshold. I see many people as a 22-year-old in college where it's harder for people to go to college that don't qualify for SUSI, even though their parents may be working a good job, they may have good income, but they do have high mortgages, high overheads and everything. So I think it's really important. And I have heard many stories of people, as previous speakers have said, that have missed out on the SUSI grant by a couple of €100 over the income threshold. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I'm just going to mention, and that I'm happy that you're looking into, is grants for part-time students.
Yes.
I'm currently studying in LIT at the moment through the accumulation of credits and certification of subjects. And I'm not saying that I would be eligible for the grant or not, but I know a number of students that are doing this through the Access programme. And it's unfortunate that they don't qualify for the SUSI grant. I think we have a lot of people that are studying part-time due to their own personal circumstances, be that caring for a loved one, be that working in a family business or something. So I think it's something that really needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. I think studying part-time, I find it great. It's extremely flexible, 12 hours a week, and I can manage it with my job, and it's very good. So I really would encourage you to address that as a matter of urgency if you could. It's only something very small, but I know it would mean an awful lot to a lot of people that are studying, and I must commend the Institute of Technologies that do accommodate the accumulated credits. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I know there's a number of people in my own course that are studying part-time. So look, it's an important point for me that we look at the part-time students and getting grants for them up and running as soon as possible. Thanks again, Simon, and hopefully we'll see you in person.
No, thanks very much, Councillor Dan, and thanks for all the work you do in your own community and for being here tonight. Very much look forward to getting a chance to come to Limerick in person, because I think Limerick has a really good story to tell when it comes to further and higher education. The collaboration between the University of Limerick and so many industries, the research agenda being driven in the Midwest, and now the new technological university that's going to be formed with Limerick IT and Athlone IT will be another powerhouse. So Limerick will be a city and a county with 2 universities as well, which I think is going to leave it really well placed for the recovery and for the jobs of the future. And I'm looking forward to coming down and meeting people, meeting students, meeting employers, the business community, and seeing how we can really harness all the work we want to do. I feel passionately about the comments you make in relation to part-time learning. I mean, more and more the profile of people studying and learning in Ireland is going to change, and the education system needs to change as well. And I'm very lucky to be in a position where the budgets from my department, like this department now has the 5th largest budget of any government department. The funding level is going only in one direction, up, which is good. But in return, we're going to need the education system to be as flexible as possible. And I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's been really difficult for students, it's been really difficult for everyone. But we've actually seen how things like blended learning and stuff have worked for some people. So I meet some mature students who tell me, they've actually been able to learn because of the online piece in a way that they mightn't have been able to. But you're right, it is not, you know, we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth here. We can't encourage more people to do part-time learning and then say, but look, the part-time, we won't provide you with any financial assistance if you do the same degree or the same course on a part-time basis. And look, on the income thresholds, I don't disagree with you. I wouldn't be doing this review and traveling around the country virtually on it if I genuinely believed it was where it needed to be at the moment. It's in need of a radical overhaul. It'll take us a couple of years to get it to where we need to, but I think year on year we can make progress and change. Thanks so much, Dan. Look forward to seeing you soon.
I think we've got, so we haven't any more hands raised. There are a couple more questions in the Q&A. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. We've got Sinead Jackson for another question. Just before we go to Sinead, Tom Maloney, he's written quite a long question. But in essence, he has 2 in college at the moment, and without SUSI, he wouldn't have been able to do that. He's looking at this. He'll have 3 more in the next few years, but he's really requesting that the system needs to be easier to access. What are your comments on that, Simon?
Thanks very much, Tom. And I'm just reading your comment here, and in fairness, it's you've gone to a lot of detail, which I very much appreciate. So we need to come back to you with a substantive comment. But your point is right. I mean, your point in relation to.
Can I just butt in there, Simon? Because I know the geography and I know what Tom is talking about.
Sure thing.
And it comes up a lot, and I'm sure it comes up in Wicklow too, particularly people travelling in from UCD or to UCD as opposed to maybe travelling to DCU, for instance, from Wicklow. We have a lot of people that are travelling into and out of Limerick from East and West Limerick, and if you're going in and you're applying for SUSI and they're calculating your distance on the non-adjacent rate off of AA route planner, and you're 0.001 kilometre or 0.1 of a kilometre or 0.5 of a kilometre off, all of a sudden you know this from your constituency office, you're struck off, and the rates and the mitigating circumstances that might be in the home, or the road that you have to travel, or the route that you have to travel, and there are about 5 or 6 different ways that you can go from a particular townland in Arda into Limerick, depending on whether, and I must give a call out for my own alma mater in your tour de force of the 3rd level colleges in Limerick. You omitted to mention Mary Immaculate College, but depending on if you go in through Rossbrine, the Dock Road, or whether you go in by the Crescent, AA route planner won't determine that if you're doing a desktop determination, if you're a clerical officer. So I think what a lot of parents and a lot of applicants are concerned about is if you're marginally out and the non-adjacent rate, and you go for an appeal and you can prove that the route that you're traveling isn't the route that the person that has determined the outcome has come back with, there's no wriggle room. So he's made a legitimate point here that he's got a number of kids that have already gone through the system. He's a number of others. It's a non-adjacent rate, and the cliff is substantial when you fall off. So it's a point that, and it comes up a lot in constituency queries.
No, thanks, Patrick. I think you put it very well, and Tom's comment here as well. So I mean, 2 things I'd say. I mean, the point you made about the cliff edge, I think, is really important, because up until about 8 or 9 years ago, you only had to live 24 kilometers away to get the non-adjacent rate. That was changed to 45 kilometers, right? And you're absolutely right. If you go a little bit over that, the difference in the level of grant is very, very, very significant. But I think the point Tom is making, as well as that, is just, it sounds to me like he's had a pretty chaotic experience with SUSI in terms of inaccurate information, being told different things, different times. And I mean, to me as the minister, I mean, that's utterly unacceptable to me. So we link with Tom on it. I mean, I'm not making excuses for them at all. The size of the SUSI scheme has ballooned so much in recent years. I think part of the process in terms of reforming it, as well as the financial, is going to be exactly what Tom's last line says, making the system actually easier to access and navigate. And I'm working on that as well. I think it's an overly complex system. And I get a lot of queries in my own office, let alone department, about that as well. So thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate it.
We have Jeremiah Roach actually coming on. I'll go to Sinead in a minute as she's asked a question already. So Jeremiah, you've got the floor. You can unmute. I think he's... We might have to go to Sinead 1 second now, and we'll see if Jeremiah comes on in a second. So Sinead, there we go.
Thank you. Not a worry. Sorry, now I know I'm asking another question again.
That's all right.
It's just something that popped into my head that was actually quite beneficial throughout the year. Because I have 2 points to make. The first one is that it was actually because of COVID that it was actually very beneficial to have the documents submitted through the email.
Yes.
The email system, because before they wouldn't accept that. Before COVID, you'd have to kind of send away for it, and as a student it's very difficult to kind of get in and out all the time, and
Sure.
trying to find the documentation online and then trying to submit it and give it in through post, and then having the original documents and having to photocopy them. And the fact that like you can just use email, and I know that kind of for data protection reasons they've had to change that, and they've identified ways of changing the data protection on that, but that has been very beneficial this year, and I hope that that will continue in the future, because I don't know about anyone else, but like I found that incredibly efficient. Like I could just scan all my documents and pop them in away in email, and that was it, and then the second point I wanted to make is with regards to, I'm an outdoor education student, and I find that as an outdoor education student, the area that I'm in is incredibly valuable. I'm in GMIT, and they're such an influential course when it comes to environmental education and sustainability education. And there's way more emphasis being put on these areas in the last, particularly the last 10 years, because I've actually been in the industry before that as well. And what I'm finding is that there's not enough emphasis on looking after, though, I'm not saying that we're every sector is very essential, but particularly with sustainability at the moment, we need to be driving way more towards that area. And I know that, say, if hopefully, fingers crossed, this appeal does go through, I want to do a master's in the future in Sweden or in Ireland, but I would love to stay in Ireland, but I actually have to go abroad, because the only master's with regards to sustainability education is in Dublin. So there is science education in University of Limerick, but I kind of want to specialize in a particular area, or either that or urban design. I'm kind of tied on the two now, which one I want to get into, but there's very limited amount of resources there for the masters in terms of sustainability education, and then trying to fund it then as well doesn't come under the SUSI grant. So it all kind of ties in together, really.
Sure. No, look, I think couple of points there, and thank you very much, Sinead. Firstly, Patrick correctly reminded me that I didn't mention Mary Immaculate, and that's bad form on my part, because I actually had a brilliant meeting with them and launched a really good book for their early years section only about a month ago, and I'm really impressed by them, and they've invited me down, and as soon as the virus allows us, I'm looking forward to that as well. Sinead, I think you make a really good point about email. I mean, people say, when are we going back to normal? And if going back to normal is all the things that we all miss, I'm looking forward to that too. But actually, we shouldn't look to go back to normal on some of the changes that have actually worked quite well in terms of improving how we do things. And I think that example of being able to submit things online and not having to go around collecting a load of paper is a good example. On the sustainability piece and the sustainability courses, one of the jobs of my new department now is to map out, and in fact there's a meeting of the National Skills Council tomorrow, is to actually map out what are the skills needs for our country in the future, and making sure we provide enough courses and supports and resources in those areas. And then the second point I'd just make on that, about kind of all roads having to lead to Dublin for some of these things. I mean, one of the reasons we're forming technological universities, and you mentioned GMIT, which is going to form a technological university with Sligo and Letterkenny, is to try and make sure that they can provide the full spectrum of courses right the way up the qualifications framework in the regions. But I'll take that point away around about sustainability courses. So thanks very much, and good luck with it all.
Minister, we have a question in from Noreen. I think seems to be asking on behalf of somebody, but can a UL student whose parents have separated since she started in college in September apply for the grant for a coming year? She's at home with her mother, who's now on social welfare with 3 younger children.
Thanks very much, Noreen. I saw your comments as well about the importance of further ed and higher ed coming together. So thank you for that. The short answer is absolutely. We have a thing called change of circumstances. So obviously I could start the year or start the college year with a certain amount of income coming into the house, and that could change. And in fact, with COVID, it's changed for so many people. So yes, you can apply to what they call the change of circumstances. And again, if you need any assistance, I'm sure Patrick's office will be able to guide you, or indeed they can link with mine and we'll provide any help we can. Thanks, Noreen. I hope that helps.
I think, Minister, we have all of the questions answered there. We've actually very quickly, we've one more just in from Susan. I have to speak up for SUSI. They have been very supportive to us and have really improved their help section and do have dedicated officers who deal with student counsellors. So it's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, and I should just speak up for them as well, Susan, because I mean, I was trying to make the point there, and I believe it. The amount of pressure they've been under in terms of the number of applications that they're dealing with every year is getting so big. So one of the things we need to try and do as part of the reform is help them and see how we can simplify the processes. But they also need more resources, being honest, in terms of staffing. And I've had very good meetings with them. So a lot of good people working there, but we just need to make the system a bit more straightforward, I think. But thanks for that.
So I think, Minister, that's all of the hands are, there's no more hands being raised and all the questions are cleared. And we do have the information in the background. And I know the team as well are taking notes to get back to people with information. So, but right now, I think that's probably the end of the Q&A session. Unless there's...
That's great. I'm just replying to the last one that popped up.
Very good.
Replying to Susan there by message. There we go.
Yeah, a good turnout for the evening, and a Sunday evening it is here in Limerick. So yeah, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much, Simon, for attending, and Patrick for it's been really good, a good conversation roll all night.
No, thanks Shane for all your help, and thank you to everybody who's taken the time to attend this evening. It's a sunny evening outside. I can see it at the window here, and I'm sure you have better things to be doing than listening to me. But look, I don't think we do enough in terms of actually listening and engaging directly with people. It's obviously better to do it in person, but I didn't want COVID to stop us having this conversation. And this is not a once-off. I want to keep the conversation going with the people of Limerick about how we build the best possible further and higher education system. We've got a lot of reforms we need to bring in, big body of work. And I think post-COVID, and there will be life post-COVID, we have to help people get their lives back on track. And I see a big role for my department in that. So thanks very much to my colleague and friend, Minister Patrick O'Donovan, for having me here this evening. I've learned a lot. It's really good to get a flavour of the issues. And again, I just encourage everyone, Shane, to make their views known. We'll circulate that email address to anyone that Patrick has contact details for, and anyone can make a formal submission to the SUSI review up until the 16th of April. And it would be great to hear as many voices as possible. I know a lot of people couldn't make it tonight, but registered as well, and we'll get that information out to them as well. So thank you so much. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks, Shane and Sean and Michael and Sarah as well. For I think we have music in the background there, and most importantly, thanks to everybody who popped on the call. Look, the most important part of this is that this is a kind of a new departure that we're able to get into, get an opportunity to engage with people directly for a review of this process and this type over an hour-long session, rather than having to get into community centres or school halls or anything like that. So Simon has committed to doing more of this on an ongoing basis. So again, anybody who has direct feedback, and I know that there might be some guidance counsellors and parents, teachers, or anybody else that might want to send in information, just send us in an email. Thanks to Simon for his time, and everybody who's facilitated it, anybody who's dropped onto the call. And I know that some people have sent their apologies. I think it's been a very worthwhile exercise. This is very important because we want to try and get the maximum number of people possible through further education. I think there's a temptation, maybe as we said at the start, to just look at this as higher education. So thanks everybody, enjoy the rest of the evening, and keep in touch. So nice.